Hey, this is Billy Howerdel, and you're watching Heavy Consequence.
We'll get right into it with the new album, What Normal Was, and it's being billed as your debut album, but I know fans of you know that you released the Ashes Divide album just almost 15 years ago, and I wanted to know what was the thought process in releasing this as a Billy Howerdel album as opposed to an Ashes Divide album uh, going into it.
It sounds different. I mean, that's kind of the first thing on the surface. It was always going to be the next Ashes record, but I did toy with the idea of, okay, it's so different, and I kind of feel myself moving in a different direction that maybe I should call it a different project, but then another name of a band didn't make sense. So I was just going to stick with Ashes. And then over the summer, I just kind of made the decision through, my manager that was like, how about we just do it under your name? I was like, all right. It was that quick a decision, but rewinding to a few months earlier than that, May, a year ago, I went out to dinner with my birthday dinner with Jerry Cantrell, Josh Freese, and Greg Puciato from Dillinger and Black Queen. And we were talking about solo band stuff because we had done a little musical chair, or not musical chair, but sharing. Like, I heard a couple songs on Jerry's. We went out to his car to hear a couple songs on his record. He heard some of mine. And they were just so encouraging on like using my name instead, for many reasons. And it was a hard thing for me to swallow, but once my manager kind of mentioned it 3 months later, he's like, I think it would be a good idea for a couple of reasons. Like, all right. I was already buttered up and ready to go with that. So
Cool. I just saw that Jerry Cantrell on tour with his solo tour, and he had Greg Puciato with him, and a really cool backing band.
Greg. I mean, great. I saw him in play. He killed it.
Yeah, I saw him at Irving Plaza in New York, and it was great. Excellent.
Really nice.
Yeah, and I'll get into a few of the songs on the album. The first song on the album, Selfish Heart, to me, it has some real Depeche Mode vibes to it. And I hear a little Depeche Mode through some of the other songs too. And sadly, we just lost Andy Fletcher from Depeche Mode. And I wanted to know, with hearing that influence on your album and that news, did they have a major influence on you, Depeche Mode, and just your thoughts about their legacy as a band?
I think that they're the band that ages gracefully, and always have. They just kept putting out quality material. And I wasn't the biggest fan, but I certainly hear, the influence of their music on mine is, I think it's probably undeniable. Martin Gore, incredible songwriter, it just sounds like campfire guitar songs that could stand on their own, but done in a minimalist, electronic, tasteful, aesthetic production. And I just think it's great stuff. I don't know every record. I listen to some of it, but it's, Songs of Faith and Devotion is the record that got me into them. I heard them when I was younger, wouldn't turn it off, liked it, but I wasn't like obsessing on it like other things, like The Cure, let's say, or Susie and the Banshees in particular. Those are, some of those records really diving in hard. But Danny Lohner and Danny loves Depeche Mode even more than I do, and I think that him in co-producing this record, I think the sum of our parts of the appreciation of Depeche Mode probably came right to the surface.
Yeah, for sure. To me, it was Violator that really, I liked them before then, but then when Violator came out, that one just blew me away. Another standout song on the album for me is A Beautiful Mistake. I really like that. There's a lot going on. It has this kind of slow build up and a really cool guitar interlude in the middle. And I'd like to hear more about that one, both musically and lyrically.
That's a little bit on I'd say the second oldest song on this record. Yeah, musically, I've had it for a long time. I had that chorus kind of right away. And didn't know, I always considered it a placeholder. And then once the verse kind of filled out the story, it made complete sense. I made the chorus make sense, by finding the right words later. And yeah, had been around a while, but some of those takes, like the guitar on that song for the most part is just the guitar from like a rehearsal or like a first run through. It's chock full of messy playing. But I thought there was something charming about leaving it in there. I think having juxtaposing perfect elements against, some messy things can always be a nice recipe, you know. And that song, music wise, is two drummers. So Josh Freese played on seven of the tracks on the record, and so this guy Tosh Peterson, another young amazing drummer that I just saw on Instagram, and I saw that Jason Freeze, Josh's brother, was jamming with him one day. And I was like, oh, you know this kid, and what's up with him? And I said, oh yeah, he's great. And he's a neighbor. And I got his number. I had Jason kind of connect us, and that was it. I just had him come up and play on a couple songs, and he plays the verses, just the two verses in Beautiful Mistake, and Josh plays the rest. But for some reason, it just sounded right. It wasn't trying to be tricky. It's just like between those two guys that I loved Tasha's feel in the verse, and I love that Josh opens up and does his thing everywhere else.
And I also wanted to talk about Poison Flowers because it was the first single released from the album. And, to me, that's, you're putting yourself out there with new music, other than A Perfect Circle. It's your first kind of solo music in a long while, if you count Ashes Divide. What was the decision? Can you talk about that song, first of all, and then the decision to put that out there as the first taste of new music from you?
Well, there was a lot of different choices of songs to put out first. When the pandemic hit and we were about to release, The Same Again was the first song that we thought about putting out. And then as time went on and we realized, okay, this is going to be a different rollout and a different setup, and everything's been moving and in flux, and there's all these false starts due to COVID, like with everyone's careers and lives. And I think it was just, it's a longer song. It has a little bit more going on to it in it. And I thought it's a nice one to kind of sit and marinate in for a while, because we're going to let that song live on its own for a while. I didn't want it to be something like Selfish Hearts, which is a little more hitting you over the head quickly, and it's a quick song, 3-minute song. So there was a couple logistical things like that, but I think Poison Flowers had some good connective tissue to where I came from with, Ashes and APC and where I'm going on this record. So it kind of maybe eased you in. And that's me putting my business hat on and not flowing from the place I probably should for a musician. But if I think about I think that's probably a good choice. And I don't love those things. I like to just make the music and get out of the way and let somebody else handle it. But I think we're at a time when you have to have your hands in all those pots. Yeah.
And you just mentioned The Same Again. I was going to ask about that one too. That's the newest single. I'd love to hear more about that one as well.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite songs on the record. If not, it depends who I'm going to play this music for, but I don't know. Musically, that's one that even if you write something yourself and then put it away and then come back and listen to it some years later, that one just hit me in a way. Like I was really proud to have written it. It's just one of those that really, not that I forgot that I wrote it, but it's just like, it didn't have like okay, this is work and this is repetition of like working on parts. I was like, oh wow, that has to be a cornerstone of this record. And lyrically, it once I decided it was going to be on the record, it kind of fell into place. It fell into place pretty quickly. All these songs got solidified in the summer of 2019, and then really, in the beginning of 2020. And then by the time the pandemic hit and we were about to release that year, we put a pin in it and took some time to mix it. But most of the content had been recorded, and yeah, I don't know how much more I want to say about that, or you can ask me if you want. But it's, I musically, especially as that song's kind of ending, it's. I'd say I put it up, if I have to pick like a top 5 moment of my musical career, it's kind of as that song is waving goodbye.
Well, that puts it in very good company, I'll tell you that. And one more song I wanted to talk about. I always like to talk about the last song on any album with any artist because it's kind of a closing statement on the album. In this case, it's Stars, which
Yeah.
actually has the only co-writing credit on it with Jeanette Napolitano from Concrete Blonde.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that song. It's a very dramatic kind of end, the soaring kind of end to the album. If you can talk about that one and the decision to end the album with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Johnette wrote the line, "I will always shine on you." And that was an add-on to a song, to the song that I had, it was, that song is the oldest song on the record. And it's from 2008, but it sounded much different. The early demo of it didn't. The early demo is a little closer to this. It was much more in the Cocteau Twins Treasure era, kind of like production. And then I kind of forced its way into a rock song in 2008, played it a couple times with Ashes of Eve. And then I liked it, but it just wasn't ready for record placement. And so I kind of ripped that one down to put the car up on the blocks and let's see what's in the engine. And I just needed a little lift. Felt like it needed one more thing, and then shared it with Johnette, and then she added that line. She added that melody and that line, "I will always shine on you." So it's like, and especially if someone else sings something, it can have even more weight than if you did it. And it immediately had a connection to what the song was about and who I was singing it to. And yeah, it was the right little, it was the nice button to put on top.